Hello, I'm Jay. Welcome to 4-Bit on Bios. New Zealand has always been a tourist destination, attracting countless international visitors. However, 15 years ago, there was once a case that almost destroyed New Zealand's tourism industry. New Zealand was even dubbed by some media as the hell of tourists. In order to recover the losses, the New Zealand police almost mobilized all the available police force to restore their reputation and resources. Local media even filmed a documentary to appeal to the public to find the suspect. However, 15 years have passed. This case remains unsolved. This is known as one of the top 10 cold cases in New Zealand, the Matsuo's Tayoko case. The 12th of September, 1998, a small fishing village in Japan. It was noon. A woman was busily working in the kitchen as nesting lead. At this moment, she was thinking of her daughter who was traveling in New Zealand. For some unknown reason, she suddenly felt a wave of unexplained anxiety. Perhaps it was because she hadn't seen her for nearly a year. She missed her too much. On Mother's Day a while ago, her daughter sent her a handwritten postcard. It mentioned that her daughter would be coming home in November. She comforted herself and gradually calmed down. However, at this moment, she didn't know a strange change had quietly occurred thousands of miles away in New Zealand. All these changes exceeded the mother's expectations. Her daughter's name is Kei Matsuosta, 29 years old, a Japanese girl born and raised, very lively and cheerful in character. With many friends, Kei Matsuosta yearned for freedom. Ever since she was young, she had a dream of traveling. Finally, she saved enough money for a trip abroad, so she unhesitatingly came to the legendary paradise, New Zealand, and lived in Christchurch for a year. While experiencing the exotic atmosphere, she was working and learning English. Matsuosta, who loved life, should have a bright future. However, all of this was broken by a sudden change. In September 1998, Matsuosta was excitedly talking to his close friend Naomi, describing his wonderful plan. She planned to go to Auckland together before he returns home for an 8-day short trip, to draw a perfect full stop for this encounter. However, her close friend looked like a lack of interest. She politely refused her request due to insufficient funds, so Matsuosta embarked on Auckland alone. Matsuosta is kind to people and is also very vigilant, so Naomi didn't worry too much. After arriving in Auckland, Matsuosta went straight to the youth hostel on Queen Street. After dropping off his luggage, she didn't trust, but went to Queen Street with full energy. The bustling streets are crowded with people. On this famous artistic street, Matsuosta didn't notice the figure that had been following her. She also didn't know she was already unconsciously stepped on a road of no return. September the 22nd, Yan is a staff member of the Queen Street shopping center. He was patrolling the stairwell as usual, checking for folks. He slowly paced from the third floor to the door of the firearm room on the second. Suddenly, he stopped and felt something was wrong. There seemed to be a smell of decay in the air. Is it the smell of small animals? In the eerie silence, he walked towards the alarm room, but the door was locked. The lobby manager was not here. He couldn't open the door. After a moment of hesitation, Yanis picked up a screwdriver and skillfully pried the door open. As the door opened, a strong foul smell rushed towards him. The small compartment of the intelligence room was pitch black. Dennis couldn't see anything, so he groped and carefully turned on the light. The light illuminated the small room, but strangely, there was nothing unusual. He searched all corners, but found no problems. It's weird. Where did this eerie smell come from? With nothing found, Dennis prepared to leave. Just then, his gaze fell on an ordinary cabinet nearby. Could someone have left unfinished food in the cabinet and forgotten to take it away? Dennis casually walked over. When he opened the cabinet door, the scene in front of him made his spine chill. He trembled and fell back to the ground, and in the cabinet right in front of him was a naked body. What's more terrifying is, a body was divided into many pieces and hastily stuffed into the cabinet. A dry blood penetrated deeply into the wood. A strong smell of corruption pervaded the air. A shrill alarm sounded on the street. The police immediately sealed off the crime scene. In the law-abiding New Zealand, such a brutal murder had occurred, which caught the local police off guard. The scene was too gruesome to look at. Simon Scott is the officer in charge of this case. The immediate priority is to determine the identity of the woman. Since the body inside and out has decayed and the body is completely naked, It's hard to determine the real identity of the woman. It makes the case a little tricky. However, just when the officer was at a loss, Identity-ku appeared easily. At the youth hostel on the same street, a young woman never returned to her room after playing, and her luggage has not been taken back. The boss thought something was strange and reported to the officer. Just then, another surprising clue also emerged. The morning of 6 days ago, on the street near the crime, the water sanitation workers found a passport and other insurance documents of a person named Matsuo Tayoko in the trash can. After comparison, the police finally identified the body. But the body of the woman had already decayed. It was difficult to determine the specific cause of death. Only a rough estimate of the time of death was about 10 days ago. But with so few clues, it's hard to identify the suspect. So Officer Simon Scott sent a group of agents to investigate near the crime scene and the hotel. The hotel investigator soon came with new clues. According to the hotel cleaner's testimony, Matsuo's bed is very neat. There were no signs of anyone having slept in it. Therefore, it was inferred that Matsuosta had likely been murdered on the day he arrived in Auckland. This also matches the forensics inference. Thus, the time of the crime was locked on September 11. At this time, investigator Brian Bruce was immediately assigned to the building at the crime scene to look for clues, since the girl was hidden in the stairwell. Then the killer must be someone who will pass by the stairwell and be very familiar with this place. Brian pondered this stairwell was somewhat special. It connects Center Court to the BNZ Bank building. Then in both buildings were all suspects. Inevitably, the volume of surveys has increased again. Brian decided to check the surveillance footage first to find suspicious suspects. However, the next discovery left him speechless and further confirmed his previous guess. On the day of the crime, no useful surveillance footage was found because the surveillance camera in the passage was turned off manually. Brian, angry, continued his investigation and discovered something even more chilling. The murder in the two buildings happened for a few days. All incoming and outgoing computer security report data were missing. This means the murderer had planned in advance. Matsuosta was likely targeted as soon as he arrived in Auckland, and the killer is a familiar staff here. They cleared the computer data for accessing the security threshold of the building. Brian reported the clues to the police, and the police immediately fixed their eyes on Dennis. Is it possible that Dennis directed and acted the police, seeing that things couldn't be hidden anymore? So he chose to cry out to catch the thief. The police officers questioned Dennis professionally. However, Dennis behaved very normally. He did not panic or become overly emotional. He denied that the case had anything to do with him. And after the analysis of a professional criminal psychologist, it was believed that since the murderer took Matsuo's clothes and drinks, even dismembered the body, the goal is to bury the truth. Don't let anyone else find out. In this case, the killer is unlikely to take such a risk to choose to call the police, and there is no evidence that Dennis was involved in the case. In the end, Dennis was excluded from suspicion. The case suddenly came to a halt. In theory, according to the murderer's actions, it should be possible to quickly determine the range of suspects. However, the discovery of the female's body was just too late, especially with the disappearance of the surveillance video. The decomposed body made it impossible to determine the cause of death, and there were no witnesses to speak of. Without key evidence, the case could not move forward. So Officer Scott decided to try to start from the girl's social relationships, from the girl's family and friends. It was understood Matsuo's was usually very well behaved. She would never go drinking or clubbing by himself. And if the murderer wanted to commit the crime, they would definitely choose a dark and windy night. So the premeditated murderer must be able to get Matsuosta to go out with them. So Officer Scott immediately focused his attention on the backpacker staying at the same hotel. The enthusiastic and cheerful Matsuosta might have made new friends here. At this time, a male backpacker came into the police's view. He was a long-term traveler from Ukraine. According to the guests here, he behaved strangely and paranoid behavior. Many people even suspect that he has a mental illness. So Officer Scott immediately led the officers to investigate, but they found it strange that the man had left Auckland on the very day the body was discovered. This instead increased his suspicion. Soon after, there are agents providing clues. The mysterious man later sold some jewelry in Australia. Officer Scott was immediately filled with deeper doubts. Could these jewels also include the red ruby ring that Matsuosta lost? However, after investigation, Officer Scott was disappointed to find This soldiery had nothing to do with the ring Matsuosta wore before his death. Moreover, thinking about it, the usually vigilant Matsuosta, faced with a seemingly eccentric backpacker, would he really let his guard down so easily? Without key evidence, the clues were interrupted again. Or just then, a new clue emerged, breaking the deadlock. A language learning institution on the second floor of the National Building attracted the attention of the police. For no other reason, this institution was one they had identified and list as a place Matsuosta was likely to have visited, so they immediately focused their attention on the staff of the learning institution. However, within the time frame of the crime, almost everyone has an alibi. The only suspect who had been suspected by the police was also excluded in subsequent investigations. As time went on, the case's popularity gradually decreased. The difficulty of the investigation increased accordingly. So far, no critical evidence has been found. The case has been back and forth, gradually becoming an unsolved case. But the New Zealand police never gave up the investigation. They compiled the characteristics of the murderer and even made a documentary about the case, hoping to get new clues from the public. In August 2000, Officer Scott, who was in charge of the investigation, extracted the murderer's DNA from Matsuosta's body, but the owner has not been identified. After a while, the media claimed that the police had a new breakthrough when retrieving old bank data. The police found that on the afternoon Matsuosta was murdered, someone performed a bank card operation at IBM's self-service cash machine close to the body. These scattered clues kept emerging, but they have not brought substantial progress to the case so far. Officer Scott's follow-up on this case has been 20 years. He recently admitted the police have finally found new evidence and identified a suspect, but he refused to disclose the details. The officer stated, "This information was provided to the Auckland police by another police district. This may mean that the suspect also left traces in other areas. This provides new hope for the case's resolution. Perhaps in the near future, as these scattered clues continue to emerge, they can piece together enough information to allow the police to identify the real culprit. Let the truth of the case come out, to give Matsuosta's family, who are far away, an explicit account."